Those were quite the moments from both the President of the United States and the First Lady, who just brought up the children of Iran, and the President saying that's who we're fighting for those families to be able to go forward, paraphrasing here, for a better future. But it was an interesting moment because, as you can see, all the cameras turned around. They're having an Easter celebration. This is Mound Day in Christian faith, so it's the day after Easter, and that Monday always. And you could see the Easter Bunny there and other people gathered. The First Lady wanted to put the focus on the children of Iran, and that's exactly what just happened. I want to bring in Congressman John James, Republican of Michigan, and importantly, member of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Good to see you. Let's start there. And a quote from the President moments ago. So we're getting a lot of access to him as journalists today, and that helps us so much in our reporting of what's coming up. So two options, he said, for Iran. You can take the good faith deal or face power plant and bridge day. And he said that if it were my choice, and he said the American people want to see us come home at this point, but if it were my choice, I'd take the oil, just like he did in Venezuela. Your reaction?
President Trump is a president of peace, but that's peace through strength. President Trump understands basic truths: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and we are endowed by rights given to us by our Creator, and that extends to everyone. President Trump is standing up for the American people, standing up for our safety here and abroad, especially after Joe Biden left our open borders and we don't know who's here. President Trump is doing everything that he can to make sure that a regime that shouts death to America can no longer be in a position to exact those heinous plans on us. President Trump is using every means at his disposal to make sure that he keeps Americans safe, and he's open to a deal. He's open to diplomacy. But again, you cannot negotiate with terrorists. I fought in Iraq. I fought against people who were trained by these Iranian militias. And I know they only understand warheads to the forehead. And President Trump understands that, too.
Yeah, I know about your military service, and the country thanks you. You're serving again in a different capacity now in leadership. I want to ask you about the enemy for a second, because you do have that perspective as well. When you hear just moments ago, I want to read this. And Trey Yingst reported this, but we have more detail on it now. Iranian state media reporting that Iran has rejected the ceasefire proposal, and Iran's response is demanding some inclusions on the list, an end to conflicts in the region. Well, they start so many of them with their proxies, they could make that dream come true themselves. A protocol for safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz, reconstruction, and lifting all sanctions. So, you know, if all of this is on the table and they're rejecting it, what can you give them?
Well, just last week, they were refusing to talk, and now they're coming up with listed demands. I think that this is moving in the direction of people who want to use diplomacy now to bring this, this conflict to an end. Again, this started because Iran was using dollars that were sent by the Biden-Obama administration that were funneled to proxies like Hezbollah and the Houthis and Hamas. They used that money to terrorize our allies and to terrorize Americans. And they are right now shutting down the Strait of Hormuz because that's the only recourse that they have. Now, they are not even talking about nuclear weapons. That is off the table because President Trump understands exactly how to negotiate, and Iran understands that President Trump means business.
Yeah, and the president just mentioned that. I mean, this was the sort of news conference before the news conference later today, and we got so much information out of this just in terms of what he will do and plans to do. But those two tracks with diplomacy now, he said, this is the easy part. As you just said, we're not even discussing them not having a nuclear weapon in the future. But Iran, according to General Jack Keane, and this is an interesting point, Iran could then use the Strait of Hormuz, if you give in now, to hold the world hostage again and you know, choke up those shipping lanes.
Iran has given us no reason to trust them, not at all, not for the past 47 years. The Iranian regime is captured by religious zealots who do not care about their people. President Trump just recently mentioned 45,000 freedom fighters, 45,000 their own citizens murdered for speaking up for freedom. And these are people who have relied on Western European appeasement that, frankly, Americans are sick of. We are sick of continuing to being threatened on our homeland, and after 4 years of open borders under Joe Biden, we can no longer take these risks. That's why I've voted multiple times to fully fund DHS, and we'll continue to stand by that. President Trump is doing what he can to satisfy his #1 goal, keeping Americans safe, and that includes making Americans strong, and we are well on that path.
Congressman James, talk to me a bit, because you had mentioned Iraq and your service in the Middle East previously. This is so different from that. We are not changing hearts and minds. This is not Afghanistan. There's a huge population, Iranian Americans in California. We've seen some of them in the streets celebrating at the very beginning of this conflict that's only 5 weeks in at this point. But it's interesting. That's not what's happening. And when you heard the First Lady moments ago, live at the White House, bring up the children of Iran and watching out and protecting them and their future, the president then hat-tipping and going on furthering, say that's, those families are who we're fighting for. What's your reaction to that?
I think it's absolutely unconscionable. The left and the fake news media who've been rooting against President Trump and American success in Iran, while they go out in the streets and chant "No kings" on their free time when they're being paid by God knows who. America is standing up for the rights and freedom of oppressed people. When you have pampered people in the left who don't know the price of freedom, President Trump is standing up for all, and even the president's wife, First Lady Melania Trump, who has not gotten the credit that she deserves. She's doing everything she can to raise the specter of what America stands for. As an immigrant herself, she was raised to believe that this was a beacon of hope for everybody around the world. America today is a beacon of hope for the Persians in Iran who yearn to breathe free. And frankly, I'm disappointed in our European allies who, frankly, are not allowing us overflight, not allowing us basing, but still expect carte blanche for their own defense of their freedom. We have an obligation to America first, but not America alone, and this includes making sure that Iran can never hurt us or hurt our allies, and that includes the innocent people of Iran and the Persian people who deserve to be free.
Yeah, and you know that those are the people that all of those Iranian Americans in California in particular are thinking about, the families back home and what the president is doing right now. He did say this more than once. The American people want to see us come home. I want to keep the American people happy. So he knows he's got politically something to do here at home, but he's also dedicated to the mission. Congressman, it is wonderful to have you in focus. Thank you very much. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox 1.